Good day, everyone. My name is Ian Benedict Mia, and today I will be presenting our research paper for the 9th National Business and Management Conference. So the title of our paper is Enablers, Barriers, and Challenges with Digital Technology Adoption During COVID-19. Initial findings from selected Philippine MSMEs. So I am from Universitas Gadjah Mada, together with Dr. Raymond Habaradas and Ms. Shiradel Jimenez from De La Salle University. So these are the contents of our research presentation for today. So our research looks into the following. The research question involves, has digitalization become a necessity for Philippine micro, small, and medium enterprises during the pandemic? And of course, our objective is to identify the enablers, barriers, and challenges of digital tech adoption among MSMEs. So these MSMEs include those that have transitioned to or enhanced their digital capabilities during the COVID-19 pandemic. So as we know, the Philippines is dominated by MSMEs, and it consists of 99.5%, an overwhelming percentage as compared to just 0.5% of large enterprises. In our research, we observed two main phenomena. The first is that MSMEs who transitioned to or enhanced their digital capability during COVID-19. The second include MSMEs that did not adopt digital technologies or enhance their digital capability during COVID-19. On the first hand, we can see that MSMEs that transitioned were able to continue servicing their customers' needs. This is partly due to a greater adoption of digital tech, including social media, e-commerce, and video conferencing, to name just a few. On the other hand, for MSMEs that did not adopt digital technology, we found that these enterprises continued to conduct their business similarly as during pre-pandemic times. And according to a study by the Asian Development Bank, some of these businesses actually decided to shut down. For this research, our methodology consists of qualitative multiple case study research method. We examined the contemporary phenomena with real-life context among selected Philippine MSMEs. And using a multiple case design, we can see that this is more powerful as compared to using just a single case for the study. Later, we will show that we actually interviewed 12 MSMEs for this project. However, we also acknowledge that we can't actually establish correlational or causal relationships, but simply, we can only provide plausible explanations on why these relationships among the phenomena or context exists. So our methodology consisted of three main steps. The first one is the theoretical sampling and interview protocol. Under this step, companies were selected based on theoretical sampling, and this sampling was identified by a structured literature review on entrepreneurial resilience. Moreover, an interview protocol was created based on a priori assumptions that was specified in the structured literature review. After we have completed the interview protocol, we conducted the first interview in December 2020 and the second interview in April 2021. All of these interviews were conducted via Zoom. We also collected published information from the internet. Once we obtained the interview data and the published information, we also triangulated them. Finally, on the third step, we did data analysis consisting of grounded theory. This consisted of three main steps. Number one is open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. In the next slides, we will be showing how we conducted this coding process. But for a brief description, open coding refers to documenting all codes pertinent to the research themes. Axial coding refers to relating data together in order to reveal codes, categories, and subcategories. Finally, we also did selective coding. With this, we connected the different categories together around one core category. Here is a sample of the initial data analysis we conducted. So as you can see here, we started with the first-order concepts. These first-order concepts are actually based on the interview data we gathered from the 12 MSMEs that we interviewed. And based on these first order concepts, we created second order concepts. So these second order concepts basically correspond to the first order concepts. For instance, as you can see here, learning agility with digital platforms. So with that second order concept, we included several first order related concepts. And then, once we gathered the second order concepts, we also created an aggregate concept. In this sense, we created the motivators for digital technology adoption. Below is just a summary of the MSMEs we interviewed for this project. So there were a total of 12 MSMEs, and all of these MSMEs come from different sectors, from fashion to beauty to digital business consultancy, down to vegetables trading. So it was a diverse group of companies that we interviewed. Now, going to the initial findings. Below are the key findings of our research. The first is that we found digital technology enabled MSMEs to develop viable business models that responded to the requirements of the business environment. Some examples of these requirements include number one, changing customer preferences, purchasing behaviors, as well as competition among businesses. The second main finding that we found is that Philippine businesses have a higher openness to digital technology during COVID-19. For instance, we found that more businesses started using social media platforms. On the other hand, more businesses were also forced to use conferencing platforms like Zoom and Google Meet. So let's go now to the enablers. When it comes to digital technology adoption, we found that MSMEs had three main enablers. The first one is opportunity alertness. And as you can see here, Ray Lugtu, co-founder of Hungry Workhorse, said that he attended two courses in order to understand platforms like Zoom or Teams. This shows that the entrepreneur has a high level of opportunity alertness because he tried to find several courses that will improve the conduct of his operations. In fact, Ray Lugtu also mentioned how they design customer experiences using digital platforms, which is why being aware of these opportunities allowed the business to thrive during the COVID-19 pandemic. Second, we have resource fungibility. The formal definition of resource fungibility is the ability of goods or assets to be interchanged with other goods or assets. But to give a concrete example, we can see the example of Charlene Ferrer, the founder of Snug Home. She says, with my resources, such as the website developer, or website platform provider, I could easily apply or open a store in Shopee or Lazada. This means that, given the current digital assets of Snug Home, they can use this in various platforms like Shopee or Lazada. It is fungible in a sense that it can be used in several of these platforms. Third, we have pre-pandemic digital capital. As the name suggests, this refers to businesses that have already digitalized even prior to the pandemic. In fact, according to Esme Palaganas, the founder of Basic Movement, she says, if you did not solve your online identity or digital platforms from the get-go, definitely right now you're struggling. But for those people who did, they are able to cope with it and then help us continue with the business. This shows that businesses that have pre-pandemic digital capital had a leverage during the pandemic itself. Next, we have the barriers. We found that there is one main barrier to digital technology adoption among MSMEs in the Philippines, and this is the hesitation and lack of acceptance of digital technologies. For example, Jet Havellana, the founder of Precision Flight Controls Philippines, he says that he is not really a fan of the online setup, but he decided to use the online setup because this is one of the compromises that they could do during the pandemic. For instance, he also said, the quality is not really good when done online. Just to adapt, we did some online. This shows that businesses were really forced to adopt digital technologies during the pandemic. On the other hand, the founder of Two Cinderellas is quite hesitant when it comes to adopting social media platforms. She says that maybe I would think of building that online shop, but I actually don't post my transactions on social media. Like the one in Bolinao, he posts all his transactions, but I don't want that. I prefer private transactions instead of posting them. As for them, they post their products even though they did not make them. I don't want to get mixed up with that style. So in this sense, the founder of Two Cinderellas is hesitant because they have a moral upstanding to uphold in line with social media. So they are quite careful before adopting the platform in the first place. We also provided a note here that we also included barriers to digital technology adoption, including the lack of access to financial resources, lack of internet infrastructure, and the lack of digital skill set. But we found that these are not relevant to our cases. You may pause the video so that you can read some of the reasons why we did not include these barriers to digital tech adoption. Next, we have the challenges that the MSMEs face during the pandemic. The first is that there was stakeholder hesitation when it comes to using digital technology. When we say stakeholder, we are referring to people like the customers and the suppliers. For instance, with Charlene Ferrer, the founder of Snug Home, she says, "We cannot help but have customers who are more willing to pay in cash. They want to pay upon delivery because they want to ensure that the item is delivered well, live up to their standards, and we live up to our promises. We cannot force the customers to pay online because they too have their own reasons." So in this sense, there is still quite some level of stakeholder hesitation when it comes to online payment, which is why founders like Snug Home decided to use cash on delivery in their transactions. The second challenge is the lack of overall market readiness for digital businesses. This was highlighted by the co-founder of Fresco. She says, "The use of digital platforms added risks as well. I think this is something the government can look into. Protection not just for businesses, but also to consumers. If consumers will not trust these platforms, how are these online businesses going to thrive?" So in this sense, there is still a lack of overall market readiness for digital businesses. And this needs to be something addressed by various sectors, not just the government, but also the businesses. In line with the enablers, barriers, and challenges that we found, we have also developed a model on digital technology adoption in the country during COVID-19. Note that this model is based on the 12 MSMEs that we interviewed. So to explain this model, it first starts with COVID-induced disruptions. This includes things like social distancing protocols as well as various other restrictions during the lockdown. And given this, there was a heightened need for business survival through digital technology adoption. Many businesses realized that for them to survive during the pandemic, they need to adopt digital platforms and communicate with their clients and other stakeholders. However, this transition also had enablers and barriers, as we've shown earlier in the paper. Moving forward, let's say that businesses were already able to adopt digital technology. This does not mean that they won't be encountering any challenges. That's why in the model, we also highlighted recurring challenges, including stakeholder hesitation and the lack of overall market readiness for digital businesses, as we have shown in the previous slide. We argue that if businesses are able to successfully and effectively adopt digital technology, this will eventually lead to post-pandemic resilience. For instance, if a business is able to effectively use social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn, if they are able to maximize this for their business, this will contribute to post-pandemic resilience. I would also like to give an acknowledgement. So the authors of this working paper are part of an ongoing global research project called the Ent Resilience Project. The research is led by Professor Erko Otio of Imperial College London, and it is a collaboration among different universities and colleges across the ASEAN. This project is also funded by the UK Research and Innovation. That's all, and thank you very much. You may contact us through our email address shown on the screen. Thank you very much.